5 p.m. and it is June 2nd. This is the Public Safety Committee meeting. I'll be standing in as chair today for the meeting, and this meeting is being recorded and will be available on the city's YouTube website. Thank you for joining us. City Clerk, will you please note the attendance for the record?
Yep.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is going to be the call to order and roll call. So since you're noting that, we don't need to go ahead and go from there. Okay, the first item on the agenda is going to be public comment. Is there anyone here who'd like to make public comment this evening? I will go ahead and list off a few ground rules first. At this time, we provide time for residents to provide public comment. I'm happy to see somebody in the audience who's here to speak. First, we'll do the ground rules. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes each, and I appreciate you coming up to the podium so that we can hear you. If you would, please go ahead and state your name and the city of residence, and we'd like you to go ahead and direct your comments to the group as a whole and not to individual members of the Public Safety Committee. Please note that this is not a time to ask questions of the commission or staff or to engage in debate. We'll quietly and respectfully listen to your concerns and get back to you hopefully at a later date if there's some additional information that you need. We can also sometimes have staff reach out separately as well.
Sure. Good evening, members of the Public Safety Committee. My name is Richard Martin, and I currently reside near Snoqualmie Parkway. But I wanted to personally make a recognition of Chief Gary and the members of this city's thin blue line. You have an outstanding police force in this city, and their efforts to fight crime and serve the public for a community of this size is absolutely excellent. I hope that each of you will make time to personally recognize the members of our local police force. And also please consider making local funding a priority. But again, I take my hat off to Chief Gary and the members of the Thin Blue Line and appreciate your time to be here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. We are very lucky we have fantastic police here. There's no doubt about it. Thank you. All right. So the next item up on the agenda is AB 25. Excuse me, the approval of the minutes.
I
Yes.
think we have more speaking.
Oh, fantastic.
Sorry, last meeting, you guys had some school zone questions, so I just kind of want to give you guys a quick update on what happened there. So got Public Works down to Park Street and had them cut back all the trees. Had them replace the batteries in the school zone lights, and then they're set now to flash from 7 p to 4 in the afternoon. Same thing up on the Parkway at Timber Ridge. Had them cut everything back because it was all starting to grow in through the trees and stuff. I just want to let you know, we actually hit that pretty hard. We had that meeting that week, and then that weekend we hit it pretty hard. 27 traffic stops, 26 speeding citations. And I can personally tell you, because I worked it for 2 days, I had people doing 50 on Meadowbrook.
Wow.
So it's pretty substantial, the speed that they're talking about. Park Street, I sat there quite a bit with the school zone lights being on from 7 to 4. It really slowed traffic down. I sat there quite a bit. I think I wrote 2 tickets on Park Street. So I think it was a big help by doing that. So
Absolutely.
just want to give you guys an update on that. So,
Thank you so much.
yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. All right. The next item up is approval of the minutes. And these are the minutes dated May 19th of 2025. Councilmember Cotton, any concerns or changes?
Nope.
All right. In that case, the minutes are approved as presented. The next item up should be the fireworks stand. The first one, this is AB 25-065, 2025 fireworks stand approval for the Impact Ministries, and this is the location at Safeway. Chief Bailey.
Good evening. Just to talk about these 2 fireworks stand permits. They were separated into 2 separate agenda bills, just in case they wanted to be voted on separately, but as the information's pretty similar between the 2 of them, I thought it'd be easiest just to talk about Impact Ministries and the process as a whole, and then I'll talk specifically about how 66 is just a little bit different because it's a new location. So first of all, just to go over it, we have 2 permits that have been requested this year in town. both by the same agency. They're run by TNT, but they're being benefited. Impact Ministries is the nonprofit that is being benefited by these two fireworks stands. So as you can see in the permits, we've had Impact Ministries and TNT have been in the city for many years. We've always had a good relationship with them. As you know, the fire department does inspections on the stands. We go over the permits, what's required as per the SMC, and then we do inspections of the stands every day that they're in operation. We've had no problems with Impact Ministries. They've been very receptive to anything that we've told them, any suggestions that we've given them. They've corrected them right away, and they've also, when they've been required to leave, which is the 5th, they're supposed to have everything cleaned up by 5 p.m. on the 5th. They've followed those guidelines also. A little bit more about the a little bit more about the permits. So I've reviewed both permits. They meet all the requirements of the SMC in regards to the licensing, the bonding, the permit fees, and the application with the state patrol regarding their fireworks permit. So everything's in order per the SMC. First of all, I'll talk about the Safeway location, and I'll just show you real quick here, share my screen, and I'll just give you a brief view of the Safeway one. So here's an overhead view that was part of that permit of the Safeway location. You can see there in the top left-hand corner of the screen is where they usually put their stand, right here up against the back corner. It shows the setbacks to make sure that they're supposed to be 50 feet away from any structure, any vegetation, any parking, 25 feet for any cars that are parking. So that shows the location of where their stand's going to be and how it meets the setbacks. Again, that's the same location they've used for several years. So you've probably seen it there the last couple of years. The next one that I wanted to show and talk about is the one that is going to be the new one that is going to be on lot. They're referring to it as lot 213. So that's basically the area down the gravel parking lot next to Dark Horse Coffee, and the in between that parking lot in between Dark Horse and the residence there on Railroad Avenue. So again, this is a new location, same company, same people that are doing it. They just want to have 2 locations here in town. This one's a little bit different because at first their first application did not meet the requirements of the code in regards to setbacks. So I worked with John Cooper, who worked with the people that were putting on the stand to make sure that it met the requirements. You can see there by the diagram where they're going to place the stand close to the front of the street. They've actually had to decrease the size of their stand to be able to hit the right setbacks. Because you can see it's very tight there. I know it's kind of hard to pick up in the picture, but they have, as I said, they have to be 50 feet from any structure or vegetation. So they'll be 50 feet from it in the back and then over to Dark Horse in order to make it 50 feet. That's why they had to reduce the footprint of their stand. It's going to be about half the size of their other stand. And then the same for the residents on the other side to get it underneath the 50 feet. They had to, they had to have it both reduced on either side. Also to meet the requirements of no cars within 25 feet of the structure. That's where they had to move it. They had to move it to the front of the lot to make sure they didn't have 50 feet to the vegetation, and then right on the permits for 25 feet for the cars parked. As I said, I worked with Cooper to make sure that he was good with all these requirements and that it met the right setbacks. The other thing we were concerned about was traffic, pedestrian traffic going across the street. We looked at different options as to how we could, try to direct people and keep people from crossing right there. So what we landed on was they're going to put up signs on that iron fence that's in front of where the cars are parked on the diagonal across the street, reminding pedestrians to go to the crosswalk over on King Street. We'll do the best we can to, we're going to direct people over there. Hopefully they'll use the crosswalk and use that to go across. So these new requirements, I'll make sure that we make a targeted visit when they're setting up that stand, make sure it gets in the right spot. make sure they get up the signs. If they don't do them, they know, they've been advised that it's part of their permit, and I won't allow them to open unless they're in the right spot and they have the signs up. And they're also going to be coning off that whole parking lot, so there'll be no parking in that lot at all, right up to the property line. The homeowner is gonna be able to park their cars where they normally do, right up against the house, but there'll be no parking for Dark Horse or anybody else in the gravel lot. That'll actually be coned off to vehicle traffic. The reason why we can't have cars parked in there is it would not meet the 25-foot setback.
Councilmember Cotton?
Is there still going to be allowed parallel parking on their side of the street in front of that stand?
Yes, the street parking that's already in place, the parallel parking up against the curb is within the 25 feet, so they'll be allowed to park there.
Okay.
And again, I'll double check it. I'll probably have Cooper go with me the first day when they're setting up, just to make sure everything's the way it's supposed to. We looked at it, we weren't, at first, as I said, we weren't super excited about having it there. That's why, they did, meet the requirements, and they worked really hard to make it work. And so because of that, they showed a real interest in working with the city and the fire department. So that's why we went ahead and approved the permit, or, approved them to go forward with their permit, their application to the council.
Okay. Councilmember Cotton, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I did have a additional question, because I know that they have been coming for a number of years, especially up to the Safeway lot there. And I was noticing on a couple of blank spots in the permit, and I just wondered, do they benefit as a 501c3 anyway by the city, as far as like permitting fee costs or things like that? Do they get any special consideration for that? Do you know?
Does the city waive fees for them?
Well, I know they still have the $25 fee, but my question was specifically, in their paperwork, they left their tax exempt ID number area blank. They did enclose the first page of the IRS ruling. However, the page they included, besides saying that they qualified for a 501c3, didn't have a number on it, and it said that they don't, under IRS rules, don't qualify as a church. So that was my question, is if that's something that they have to fill in that particular area, the tax exempt ID number. And then the second part of my question is, the other area they left blank was on the permit under their security listing. There's a first aid safety security plan for after hours, and that was left blank. I mean, I don't know if that can just be like call 911, yeah, but I'm wondering if it was just an oversight on their part, or if these are things that are especially important or not.
That has to do with their application with the state as a fireworks vendor. The way I look at it is the fact that they work through us and they get everything in place, that we've met the requirements for their safety plan. So that really has to do with their application for the state. I don't believe, I would have to, I have a copy of it here. It'd take me a minute to look at it. I don't know if Dina knows about the requirements for the tax identification number. I don't believe that that's part of, I think that's part of their application for the state, but I don't believe that's a requirement for the SMC that they have a tax ID number, but I'd have to sit down. Like I said, I have a copy. I'd have to look at it.
It's on our city special event
Okay.
permit application, is why I was just wondering.
Yeah, technically, they're not required to get a city, though it's a little bit different than the normal event permits for the city. It doesn't go through our special events office like other permits does, because this one is actually in the SMC and it goes through the fire department. They
Right.
actually don't fill, even though they did the online one and it's part of their application, they technically aren't required to fill out a event permit, if you will, that goes through the communication department, because they do that separate permit
Okay, that's,
through us.
okay, that actually answers my question.
They fill it out, just because they want to get the information out there, but they're not, we talked about that earlier. I talked with the events coordinator, and she said that they weren't required, it was kind of an either or, and we figured the best way to go was through the fire department permit and keep it the same that we've
Keep the
done,
information on file. type
because
of-
that's how it's handled with the SMC.
Okay, that answers my questions then. Thank you.
And then I did have one other quick question. I noted that for the second new location that we have now, the lease payment is for the period from June 20th to July 9th. Just confirming that under the SMCs, they're required to be out by 5 PM on July 5th, including any rubbish.
That is correct. They're supposed to be out by 5. They're supposed to have their stand out by 5 PM on the 5th. Yeah. They're not allowed to sell after I believe noon on the 5th, and then they have to have their stand out. But most of them are cleaned up that morning.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Cotton, any concerns about this or putting it on the consent agenda?
Consent's fine with me.
Great, thank you. I'm agreeable to that as well. All right, the next item up on the agenda then, so both of those will go on the consent, and the next one will be e-motorcycles and e-bike discussions.
Again. Or still, I guess I should say.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, members of the public and those in attendance, Interim Chief Haracy. We're following up a little bit with our e-bike and e-motorcycle conversations. Over the last month or so since I last spoke with y'all, we've done a little bit more research into some things and have kind of hit a couple of hurdles that I'm working with the city attorney on as we go forward. And one of those that's the biggest is the enforcement of infractions or moving violations, things like that, where we would typically file them with the King County Prosecutor's Office under with the Juvenile Division. In conversations with them, they are not accepting those charges on anybody under the age of 16. And in looking through a lot of our calls and hearing what my officers are, or who they're contacting, the majority of them are under the age of 16. So we're working through some of those things. I don't know what the solution is at the moment because that is a policy decision based on the prosecutor's office as a whole. So I will say we're going to continue to work on that. In the meantime, we are also looking at our city ordinance as a whole and how we can address some of those concerns. However, anybody under the age of 16 would still have to go to the juvenile prosecutor for a review. So if they're not filing it, it makes it difficult for us to charge them. If they have a learner's permit, so that could be somebody who's 15, but they have a learner's permit, or above or 16 and older and are a juvenile, we can cite them into municipal court based on the fact that they do have a driver's license. They have to have some type of license in order to do so. The other side of that is we can also enforce criminal law. So if it's for instance, a reckless driving, reckless endangerment, anything like that where there's a property damage, things like that, those are cited in just like the last one, the arrest we made early April. We're still waiting to hear back on if that's going to be filed. We send everything off to them. There's some turnaround time and some wait time for that, but those we can still do. So our goal going forward, at least at this time, is to continue enforcing the RCW on any road violations to ensure the safety. That's includes any reckless driving intersections down the parkway, downtown, things like that that are on the roadway. If they're under the age of 16 and we're making contact at this time, we're going to have to take a educational approach with not only the individual, but contacting the parent and advising them of, the situation and kind of addressing it from that standpoint, simply because we know the prosecutor's office is not going to take the charge. Even if it's running a stop sign, they won't take that. So, and we're in my communication with the city attorney, we've been a little busy lately and kind of had to put this to the side for a minute, but we've been working on things and looking at things, when we're not focused on those bigger projects that we've been working on over the last couple of weeks. And hopefully in the next couple of meetings, we'll have some kind of answer for y'all to bring something forward, or at least give some more ideas for y'all to consider. But as we approach summer and the end of school, my goal is to just continue enforcing the laws that we have on the books and what we have on our ordinances to the best of our ability until we can make any modifications going forward. So I will open it up for questions for y'all, or if you have something for the city attorney, she's here for you too.
Okay, Councilmember Cotton.
Are you aware if there are any kind of, you mentioned like on the educational side of things, are there any kind of courses on e-bikes, like e-bike safety or anything like that, where these underage juveniles, I mean, can you folks like issue a warning or require them to do like attend a e-bike safety course or do community service, or do you have that kind of authority? Something that might not necessarily go through the prosecutor's office?
We can develop something. In my from my previous employer, the fire department there had a bike program where they did an education piece. So I can reach out. I don't have anything at the moment that stands out that I can just say we have something ready to go.
Right.
But I can do some research into that. On the e-motorcycles, as we stated in the last meeting where we talked about it, a lot of those are falling under the classification of a motor vehicle. Therefore, you would get that through driver's ed and all the other stuff. But with minors operating them without licenses, that becomes more difficult. So I'll look into it.
Yeah.
That is something that we can look at, and we have to have the legal authority to do those things as well, and making sure that we're on page between myself or the department and then city attorney's office, that we are doing things within within our authority and how we're doing that. That's one of the things that we're struggling with right now, for example, is impounding bikes. We've seen through several emails that have come to us, why don't we just take the bike? Well, we can't deprive somebody of their property without the legal authority to do so. The e-motorcycle that we towed, it was committing a crime and it was classified as a motor vehicle and registered. So I have the legal authority to tow that. So there's a lot of that comes into play, and then also storage and who's paying the impound fees and things like that. So those are the things that myself and the city attorney are working through in our conversations.
I have one follow-up.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of looking for ways that this is, as it is. I mean, you can like give them a, no kind of a thing, but I'd like to see it be more than just like a slap on the wrist. It's like maybe cause a little inconvenience that this kind of sticks in their mind about, having to spend a sunny afternoon in a class learning safety or something like that.
It's not a bad idea. I mean, like I said, I'm open to anything at the moment because, even last year when we implemented the Safe Rider program, that applies to bicyclists as well, whether it's a pedal or, or a e-bike, or an e-scooter. So that was very instrumental. We plan on doing that again. I'm hoping to start that after school starts, and I'm having conversations with those companies who assisted us in that program last year. So that is another tool that can help, and maybe between myself and others, we can figure out a way to develop a class for that purpose. The other thing I have to consider is staff time and who's teaching it. So that's one thing that I will definitely look into. It's not a bad idea. It's just one of those we have to think outside the box right now.
Did you find with the ice cream program that you've got more positive responses with rewarding the wanted or good behavior versus like the educational side of the negative behavior?
There was a lot more positive out of it
Uh-huh.
than negative. And in fact, when the kids started seeing their, you know, friends get it, then, you know, shortly thereafter, we would start seeing those riding with helmets and,
Modifying their.
you know,
deal.
I was driving down the road here one day after a meeting and I saw a couple of kids and one of them had a bike or a helmet on, and then I had made the loop and came back around, I think, for the next meeting. And then happened to see that same group of kids, and all four of them that were in that original group were wearing helmets. So that, you know, it did help. And it was very big, especially during any events we had like Snoqualmie Days and things like that, where we saw a lot of positivity out of it. So that's why I want to keep it going.
Maybe we can do it with the e-bike stuff too, so.
And it applied to both. If we saw somebody on an e-bike, we did the same thing, and I'm sure fire did when they were handing their, you know, their little safe rider citations out as well.
Great.
Thank you, Chief. Yep, I'm fully supportive of any positive reinforcement for good behavior and all of that. I would also like to hear, obviously, I'm not going to put you on the spot today, but when we talk about this in the future, what options there are to go after the parents, especially for the purchase of the bikes, which are illegal in the city, if that's an option that we would need to proceed with. And then would also like to hear what options we could have for community service for those parents and children, especially if we're seeing them as frequent flyers.
We have been talking about that. And that'll be I think, give us a little bit of time while we work through that one, because there are a little bit more, I think there's a little bit more of a hurdle on that one that we have to overcome before we can just say, yeah, that's the best way to go. But we will have something together for you. We were even talking about it just prior to this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I know that everyone's been very busy. Yeah, I'd like to get back to it when we have some time and some bandwidth for it. So,
Save you from some of the emails.
yes,
Right.
be safe. All right, if there's nothing further, then we would move on to the work plan.
Councilmember,
Oh. Oh, and Chief, one more thing, or interim chief, just something to think about, whether as school is getting ready to break for the summer, whether, I know that you guys do a great job of pushing information and educational resources out on socials, but whether it can go out through the school district as well. so
We've been
that
working with
parents can-
them on that, and I think they've already pushed one message out.
Okay.
So I'll verify with them tomorrow, and I'll get with my SROs to see about when that next message is going out, and it'll go out through the parent portal and things like that. So we have been working on that and working with them, and they have been more than happy to put that message out.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, Chief Bailey.
Before we move on, I just wanted to correct a statement I made earlier, just about report back on the fireworks. I had it just off a little bit as to what they're able to sell. So the fireworks stands are able to sell until noon on July 5th. They're required to clean out their stands and clean out all the garbage by 5 PM on July 5th. But they're actually not required to take the stands out themselves until July 7th at noon. So that was where I got just off a little bit on the days. So they have to have all the fireworks out of the stand. They have to have all their garbage cleaned up. Everything needs to be cleaned up from the site by 5 PM on July 5th. But the actual stands themselves don't have to be removed until July 7th at noon. Most of the time they have it out before then, but I just wanted to make sure I got that on the, answered that question for you on the timing as to when they have to have things out by.
Wonderful, thank you.
thanks.
All right. The last item that we have on the agenda is the work plan. Do we have someone who's going to be speaking to that?
Their plan.
All right.
Who wants to go first? Fire's on top.
And it's red.
I did appreciate the color coding on that.
Different piece of paper though. Did you want, just to clarify, did you want me to go over everything that's on there? Did you want answer questions, or what are we looking for in regards to the work plan?
Just a brief update if anything has changed, I think would be a good place to start.
Okay. So first of all, you can see on there that the two things that were completed were the accreditation, the reaccreditation being, that happened at the end of, middle of 2024. Also, the strategic plan was finished And if you remembered back to the last Public Safety Committee meeting, I talked about where we are in regards to getting, moving forward on some of those things, assigning those out to the crew. So we're working on creating our plan going forward as to who's going to be responsible for each one of those objectives that were on it. And I got it from the officers, what they wanted to work on. So now I'm working on how we're going to kind of fit those in, what's going to go and where, what we're going to tackle first. The next thing on there is the EOC. So we had the first one was the orientation of the EOC that was completed early April. The next thing we're doing is at the end of June, at the end of this month, on the morning of the 30th, after our department head meeting, that's when we're going to do a tabletop exercise with the department heads. Really where it's just going to be, we're going to be in the EOC. We're just kind of go through an exercise with the department heads to talk about responsibilities. We're going to have a mock scenario that we're going to walk through. And so over the next couple weeks, I'll be working with the department head team, kind of giving them an idea of what to expect out of that. We're going to have that exercise and, look for positive and negatives out of that we can build on. And then we're still building toward in the fourth quarter of 25, we're going to have a large citywide exercise where obviously the council will be involved with that, as well as some of the outside agencies, as internal agencies, where we're going to, have a couple hours where we're going to go through a whole exercise and let everybody practice it. So we're just kind of building up as we go. That would be kind of the culmination. We're looking at probably doing that sometime in October. Haven't picked a date for that yet, but that should be coming out pretty soon, just so it's on people's calendars so they can plan on it. So I'd look for that date in the next couple of weeks, but that's kind of the time frame we were looking, was maybe near the middle of October.
And Chief, will the second and third in command also be participating in the citywide one with partners as well? Just so that if for some reason a department head was not available in the event of an actual emergency, that whoever was next in command would know what to do.
That's the goal. Is
Okay.
the exercise that we're going to be doing at the end of June is going to be really geared toward making sure all the department heads know what their responsibilities are and where they would be, who is going to be responsible for taking their place if they're not there, so that in between the exercises, they'll really have a chance to look at their plan individually in their own department and figure out those succession planning, get everything all set in place so that we would be able to use it. But yeah, the one on the full city exercise is going to be using everybody. We're going to, not only are we going to talk about, having planning right then, but we'll also probably fast forward and say, okay, now it's, here's what we're doing right now. Here's our plan for the next period. Okay, maybe it's a day later and we're going to fast forward the clock. Okay, now it's a day later. And that would be the opportunity where maybe we'd be able to move in some of those other people into some of the key positions. Just so they could get that, the supervisors could get that feel. So that's kind of how I'm thinking it's going to go. But again, we haven't made those plans yet. We're kind of building up to that.
Wonderful, thank you.
The next one on that list there, well, first of all, budget. I mean, we have obviously been working with the other department, with finance, on the budget, and as we move through that, so that's kind of out of our hands, but we have been working with finance on that. The IFF contract, we're in the middle of negotiations. Obviously, we can't talk about what's going on. We've had some meetings. There has been some tentative articles have been signed off on. Some of the ones that aren't economic have already been TA'd. I believe we're on our third or fourth meeting, and they're going to be starting to talk about economics here shortly, but we haven't got into that yet. We're going through the non-economic items right now. Wildland evaluation. So Lieutenant Laswell's kind of our department expert, subject matter expert on that. He's been out since December. He actually just came back to work this morning, light duty. So that one's been, in regards to full plans for the future, that one's been stalled just a little bit. But some of the things that we have been talking about, that we have been working on, is I've had some conversations with Phil Bennett from Public Works, as well as Dana McCall from Communications, as in putting out, we've talked a little bit about what we want to put out to the community. And we've been to some meetings that have talked about forecasts for the fire season. Really not expected to pick up until like August, but we're kind of looking at, I would expect to see some community education publications from our communications team is going to be coming out probably the end of June, centered right around the 4th of July, depending on what our weather is. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Phil Bennett from the Public Works has been really working a lot on some of the committees and has some really good ideas on what the city can and can't do. And so we're going to work between the two of us and with Dana to get some stuff out to the community.
Okay, wonderful.
The last one on there, apparatus. I think we're, we've already talked about that quite a bit, other than, the engine's gonna be here. We have that party set for the 14th. The A car has been ordered as of last week. We're replacing one of the A cars. Just like the engine, the timeline's pretty good on that one. We're expecting that one to be fall of 2026. Once it actually, once it's actually comes to us, that's the plan. And then we also had some other apparatus that's part of that is we had a pickup that was supposed to be, the white Tahoe was supposed to be replaced this year. That one's on hold for right now. We have 3 vehicles in the city that are working well, and with some of the budget implications, we're just gonna hold off on that one for a little bit until some of the things clear. So that's kind of the plan on some of our replacement vehicles. We did have, the vehicle that I'm driving right now. Part of what that was written toward was the pickup that I'm driving, that Ford pickup, the newest one, was replacement for that Expedition that we used to have that was totaled with the insurance. So it was talking to some of that. That's been ordered. That's obviously in place. But that other pickup would be our next fleet item. Is just on hold until we figure out some of the budget implications going forward.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Cotton, do you have any questions?
Nope.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Now for the longer list.
Well, I think we can skip the first one.
So for the police department, we've got multiple things that are listed out in our plan for 2025. Some of them have been completed, and I'll kind of touch base on those. Obviously, we're still working the North Bend contract and over the next 18 months till the end of that contract season with them. Obviously, we're still working through our budget and determining how things are going to look. Couple things we did complete last year was obviously our contract negotiations, which y'all are very much aware of, and our LEMAP review. We're looking at accreditation, but that's a long-term project. We're estimating 2 to 5 years, give or take a little bit. Our big project that y'all approved last year for work for this year was our construction project. That is about a day away from being completed roughly. There's just some minor things that have to be kind of cleaned up, and I think he's just got to install some hanging rods and things like that. And then that moves us into one of our big projects, which is a little further down the list, and that's going to be the purging of evidence and just a complete inventory, which our evidence technician will start on as soon as that room is completed. There's a lot to that. We're starting with the North Bend items first, based on the time frame that we have left with them, and to limit what we have in our inventory there. Then we have completed a couple other things, which is the Sunnyside and Yakima jail contract. So we're now fully operational with those and renewed on the Sunnyside one. Sergeant Weiss will be working on the parking ordinance, and we'll be bringing that forward to y'all soon. Obviously, with everything that's gone on over the last several months, we kind of pushed that one back a little bit, but it's not that far out, so we will get that to y'all. And of course, we also have the e-bike and e-motorcycle portion of everything. We also completed the DV advocate contract, which I think y'all, I want to say we did that in March. So that we already had her, but now it's not being done through the prosecutor's office. So we're contracting directly with them, providing that additional service to our community members. We're always updating policy. That's part of also our LEMAP and our accreditation process. I look at policies every day to every other day on a general basis, and may or may not be sending them depending on what's going, what their requirements are and updates are from the company we contract with. We'll send those over to the city attorney for her final approval and things like that. And then, one project that will be an ongoing project, we haven't really started it just yet, and that's the purging and scanning of all of our paper files and reports and making them all electronic. That's a bigger lift and it's gonna take a little bit. Also need to work through some processes. One of the things that held that up was obviously when we were short-staffed in our records department and things like that. So it's on the horizon and I can't wait to get rid of those. We are required to keep some paper copies in certain things, in certain cases, but the majority of them will eventually go all electronic. And then the last is we are just about completed with all of our career level certifications, which is a requirement by statute. I achieved my mid-level and executive status or career level certifications in March, along with Sergeant Smith, who completed his first level supervisor, because you have to wait 1 year from the date of the time you were promoted into that position. So the last one we have is Sergeant Vladis, who was promoted on July 1 of last year. He has completed all the necessary training for that. And I just have to wait until after July 1 to submit that paperwork, and then he will have achieved it. And that will complete the list of all the supervisors who need to be career level certified. So a lot of going on, a lot of it's been completed, some of it's still in the works. The evidence room was the biggest lift so far this year, and there's a lot more work to be done down there. And, you know, luckily we're already making plans for some of that. And then we also re-implemented the use of property.com for purging some of those items and things like that. And they've picked up a couple of times, and they come out here once a month. So if we have something, we just let them know. So, any questions?
Not for me. Thank you. All right, there being no further business to come before the commission, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.